Hi friends, welcome to the Share, Invite, and Proclaim channel. My name is Judy. Topic for today is about Israel, their past, present, and future. The Jews have been conquered by many empires like the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, Alexander the Great, the Romans, the Byzantine Empire, the Crusaders, the Muslims, starting with Muhammad in 638 AD, and then the Ottoman Empire, and then finally by the British after World War I. Well, over much of the history of Israel, what has kept them in a state of slavery or captivity? Several things. It could be pride or arrogance or self-sufficiency, or turning to idols, or looking for the visible things instead of the invisible things of God, or wanting to hear pleasing words instead of the truth or God's voice, like a feel-good message, compromise, wrong alliances, and the fact that they're in between larger empires. When one empire would move to another, they had to go through Israel, and so they were in the way. Isaiah warned the Jews against making alliances on their own. He said in Isaiah 31, "Woe to those who execute a plan, but not my plan, and make an alliance, but not by my spirit." And they had several alliances. They've made several alliances that went south and did not serve them well. You know, sometimes our plans can go south, and it happens when we operate in the flesh instead of the spirit, when we think just of ourselves and not of God. Or if the plan is easy and we don't think God can be bothered. But God has to rescue and redeem us when our plan goes south. What major wars has Israel fought against her neighbors? Well, Israel became a state in 1948. The United Nations made them a state so that those Jews around the world could go back to their ancient homeland. The Holocaust was so terrible that the United Nations wanted to give them a state. And this is what the current conflict in the Middle East is about. The Arabs do not recognize the state of Israel. Well, right after this announcement by the United Nations that Israel would become a state, President Truman immediately recognized Israel and made an alliance with Israel to help her absorb the Jews from around the world. This was not an easy decision for Truman because General Marshall, who was involved with the Marshall Plan, who was helping to rebuild Europe, needed Arab oil. He was also concerned about Russia in getting too involved in Europe and also in the Middle East. Even the Democratic Party was opposed to Truman supporting Israel because they were afraid that he would not be reelected in 1948 election in the fall of that year. So right after this, the Arab armies of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, they all attacked Israel. Now the United States embargoed these countries. The British helped a little bit, but the Jews, the Israelis, formed an army to defeat their enemies. And finally, in February of the next year, they signed an armistice that Egypt could control Gaza and Jordan could control the West Bank. The second major war that Israel had with her neighbors was the 1967 Six-Day War. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, all attacked Israel. Israel was greatly outnumbered. For example, the Arabs had 240,000 men. Israel had only 100,000. The Arabs had 2,504 tanks. Israel had only 800. And the Arabs had almost 1,000 planes, and Israel had 300. Israel took over East Jerusalem. That was controlled by Jordan. They took over Bethlehem, Gaza, Golan Heights. Syria had been using the Golan Heights in which to bomb Israel. 20,000 Arabs died, 800 Israelis died, but the Israelis were able to defend themselves and won the war. A third major war against Israel was the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The countries of Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Algeria, and Morocco all attacked Israel. Golda Meir was the prime minister. She was warned ahead of time, but did not take it seriously. The Israeli Knesset wanted to use nuclear weapons, but Golda Meir said no, and so they used conventional weapons. But the Israelis were able to defend themselves and win the war. Now, presently, Israel has been blessed by God by helping the country or the state become self-sufficient so that she does not have to depend upon any of the Muslim countries surrounding her. For example, since 1948, the Israelis have planted 240 million trees, so it's no longer a barren land. They have built water recycling and water purification desalinization plants that take salt out of the seawater, and then they use this water for drip irrigation. So if you go there today, you see these hose with little tiny pricks in them that allows the water to drip out so it won't evaporate. Many homes and businesses use solar power. The discovery of major oil reserves underground allows them to be independent of foreign oil. Fish farming technology, they're able to reduce the nitrogen in the water for their fish farms. They have reduced pollution in transportation by using buses and a train system, and in many of the cities, they just either walk or use a bicycle. They have reduced their food waste by inventing a new type of storage bag that prevents bugs and insects from intruding. They've created a new type of flexible packaging instead of using metal cans or plastic. They have high-tech companies, medical improvements and prescriptions, and military advancements by the purchase of U.S. equipment and planes. And then also, just recently, the U.S. Embassy was moved to Jerusalem. So in 70 years, Israel has become independent of its neighbors in oil, food, technology, medicine, energy, water, and military advancements. If you visit Jerusalem today, you will see soldiers, male and female, walking around with machine guns to keep the people safe. Now, these blessings for Israel were prophesied long ago in Isaiah 36. God said, "I will not let you hear insults from the nations anymore, nor will you bear disgrace from the people any longer. It is not for your sake that I'm about to act, but for my holy name. I will take you from the nations," which he did in 1948, "and bring you into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and I will put my spirit in you. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I will multiply the fruit and the produce of the land." Well, God said in the Old Testament that he would bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. And I think most of our presidents since 1948 have blessed Israel. And I think that's why we have been successful in the last many years. Now, not everyone has supported Israel. There's a lot of anti-Semitism that's going on in the Middle East, also in the United States. But in 2012, Hezbollah built 4 underground tunnels from Lebanon to Israel to use as an attack base. Israel found these and destroyed them. In 2014, Hamas, located in Gaza, built tunnels to bomb Israel. May the 5th of 2019, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad groups launched 600 rockets into Israel. 2.5 million Jews had to go into bomb shelters. Since 2014, Israel has destroyed 32 terrorist tunnels. Now, the charters of Hamas that are in Gaza and Hezbollah that are in Lebanon, financed by Iran, they call to eliminate Israel. Do you remember on TV a former president of Iran saying that he wanted to eliminate Israel off the face of the earth. And that was predicted, and I'll read that in a minute. The United States has not been free of anti-Semitism. Some groups like the KKK have persecuted Jews. In 2018, in October, an attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Philadelphia, where 11 were killed and 7 were wounded. In July of 2018, a Jewish synagogue in Carmel, Indiana, the Sharei Tophilia, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce all those right. A young adult sprayed swastikas on the outside of the synagogue. In March of 2019, there was open anti-Semitism conference at UNC and Duke University supporting the Palestinians in Gaza. In April of 2019, there was an attack on the Shabbat Synagogue in Poway, California, with 1 killed and 3 injured. In April of 2019, a top-rated liberal arts college denied the formation of a Jewish group on campus that supported Israel's right to exist. Now, Jewish students on U.S. colleges cannot express their views without being labeled racist or sexist or homophobic or Islamophobic. Can't say that word too well either. In May 2019 at NYU, a student group called Students for Justice in Palestine was given the school's Presidential Service Award in spite of their history of violence against Jews on campus. Now, the blessings that I mentioned earlier will not last. They have a future of making unholy alliances in the past, and they will make some future unholy alliances with the Antichrist. They will experience the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel and Jesus, and they will experience the battle of Armageddon and some judgment. Israel will be restored, and then nations will face a judgment in the valley of decision for their mistreatment of Jews. So let's talk about the future of Israel. In Psalms 83, there's a war against Israel. The countries attacking Israel are Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And the psalmist says, "Do not be silent, O God, do not be still. Your enemies make an uproar, and those who hate you have exalted themselves. They make shrewd plans against your people and conspire together against your treasured ones. They have said, 'Come, let us wipe them out as a nation,' as one of the former presidents of Iran said on TV. The charters of Hamas and Hezbollah, if you look at their charters, they vow to eliminate Israel as a state. Then the Battle of Armageddon is explained in Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. It's the war of Gog and Magog. Gog is the land of the north, and the land of the north of Israel are Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, and Russia. Now, there's some unusual names in the first part of chapter 38. Some of them are places, and some of them are specific people or regions. But in verses 2 through 8, the attack against Israel will come from the northern and southern countries. When does this happen? In the end times. The attack will come when Israel lies in security. They don't have any walls or bars defending their gates. It will happen at a time when all the Jews are gathered from all the nations, like it's already happened in 1948. So this attack could not happen before 1948, but it can at any time. Then you have what happens to the land of Israel. Well, in verse 19 of chapter 38 of Ezekiel, it says, "A great earthquake in Israel." Now, Israel is located on a rift valley where two tectonic plates come together. And that's where earthquakes happened. The last major earthquake in this region was in 1927, a 6.2 magnitude that killed 500 and injured 700. Well, just recently, in July the 9th of 2018, a 3.2 quake at the northern edge of the Sea of Galilee. Now, little has been done in Israel to make their buildings or their homes strengthened to help them with an earthquake, even though in their future it's predicted that they will have a major earthquake. Well, what happens when the earthquake occurs? There's a collapse of mountains, steep pathways collapse, all walls and buildings collapse. The entire earth, animals and people, will feel the shaking of the earthquake. And so flattening this land gives the area needed for the Battle of Armageddon. The judgment upon Gog and the invaders. Now, it's a semi-arid land, and God sends a torrential rain. It's so heavy that it causes destruction. Now, it's a semi-arid land, but a torrential rain with hailstones. In April 14th of 1986, grapefruit size hail hit Bangladesh, weighing 2 pounds, but it killed 92 people. Well, Scripture says that the hailstones will be 100 pounds. Additionally, God sends fire and brimstone. Now, brimstone means a burning rock. So it's possible that a meteorite comes. Fire and brimstone is a plague or a phrase referring to the punishments of hell. Scientists and archaeologists who have studied Sodom and Gomorrah believe these cities were destroyed by a meteorite that had 10 megatons of an atomic bomb. In Zechariah 14:12, it says, "There is a plague on all the people who have warred against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet, and their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth." That kind of describes an atomic weapon of some type. Well, in chapter 39 of Ezekiel, it says, God will cause the invaders to fall on the open fields that has been flattened by the earthquake, and God gives the animals their flesh to eat. It also says in that chapter that the Jews will be able to burn the weapons of these invaders for 7 years and not have to use any wood from forests, and that it will take 7 months to bury the dead. They are buried in the valley of Haman Gog. This is an area east of the Dead Sea in the present-day Jordan. There is a rift valley along the Arnon River, and it's in a wadi, and it's called the Grand Canyon of Jordan, where they have 10 species of animals and many species of birds that will be available to eat as much as they can from the flesh of those that are destroyed. Ezekiel 39 says that Israel is restored. Israel is the center of the world. Israel will live in their land, and no one will make them afraid. And God has poured out his Spirit on the house of Israel. Jesus talked about the end times in Matthew 24, the first 31 verses. It's also in Mark 13. He left the temple in Jerusalem and went to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples asked him, when would the end of the age occur? And he said in verse 14, the gospel of the kingdom must be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all of the nations. You know, with modern technology, modern translations of languages all over the world, this is getting pretty close. Jesus told the disciples that when they saw the abomination of desolation in Jerusalem, like Daniel talked about Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who was the abomination in 175 to 163 BC. He desecrated the temple with pigs and set up a statue of Zeus in the temple, which led to the Maccabean revolt. Now, when Jesus is talking, he's referring to the tribulation. The tribulation will be so severe, more than the past, and will ever be. If God didn't shorten the days, no life would remain. Now, some Jews will leave Jerusalem and flee to the mountains. Now, possibly this is Petra because it is a mountainous area. There's caves there, there's water there, and the entrance is in a small area. When the tribulation ends, the Son of Man, which is Jesus, will return with his angels. And he says, be on the alert, for you don't know which day or hour that the Lord will return. And then if you go to Daniel chapter 9, you have the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. The Antichrist will make an alliance with Israel. He seizes power by intrigue. He will practice deception and gain power with a small force of people. After the 3.5 years, the Antichrist sets up an abomination, a desolation. He desecrates the temple. So therefore, the third temple must be built, and plans actually are in the works for that to happen. And he ends the regular sacrifice. The Antichrist will do as he pleases. He exalts himself as a god and says blasphemous things against God Almighty. And the Antichrist will be helped by the false prophet, and he will give land to his followers. In Revelation 13, the Antichrist will be injured, but the beast brings him back to life. And the Antichrist performs great signs. He makes fire come down from heaven. He deceives many. He tells the people to make an image to the beast who could speak. If you did not worship the beast, you were killed. The Antichrist required everyone to put his mark either on their right hand or forehand, the mark 666. And if not, you could not buy or sell food. Then in Revelation 19, Jesus comes to earth with his angels and believers, and the Antichrist, the beast, and the false prophets are thrown into hell. Then in Joel chapter 3 is the judgment. And I have to thank my pastor for explaining the book of Joel. In Joel chapter 3, it is the restoration of Judah and Jerusalem. And God is, in chapter 3, a judge. There's a trial of nations gathered at the valley of Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat means valley of decision. In Joel's time, the Lord judges, and the Gentile goes to the valley of judgment. And what's the charge at this trial against people? And it's they have mistreated the Jews. They have scattered my people. They have divided up my land. They cast lots for my people. They traded boys for prostitutes. They sold girls for wine. And they would be sold as slaves. So God will judge nations for their slavery. Now, Josephus was with General Titus when they invaded Rome and destroyed the temple of Jerusalem in 70 AD. 1 million people were killed by the Romans a few days before the Passover. So there were millions of Jews going to the Passover celebration in Jerusalem at the time. The Romans took 97,000 slaves of Jews back to Rome to work in the mines. Children under 17 years of age were sold off. So you have this trial scene in Joel 3. The armies are coming, but there's a military defeat. The Battle of Armageddon occurs. And it's, if you look at today, in 2019 or 2020, it's the greatest time in history that Christians are persecuted. In this valley of decision, you have people being judged in this valley. And God passes a verdict. Those that are gathered before him, He's going to separate the good from the bad. The good go to heaven and the bad goes to hell. In Revelation 7, we read that those who survive the judgment, which is the great tribulation, they are around the throne of God, worshiping him day and night. You know, the best, Israel has made some unholy alliances in the past. The most holy alliance that one can make is with Jesus Christ. It's a personal relationship. Well, how do you get this personal relationship with Jesus? Paul tells us in Romans chapter 10, verses 9 and 13, that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For whoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. God's in control of the past. He was in control of the past. He's in control of the present, and he will be in control of the future. And God says, do not fear. He's in control. Thanks for watching.